In everyday speech, waking up means leaving the dream state and returning to waking consciousness. The path of waking up builds upon this principle. The idea is that if we can move between waking and dreaming, there might be other states of consciousness out there too. As it turns out, there is a number of increasingly open states of consciousness available to our mind. As you progress through these states, your sense of being a separate self becomes ever more fluid, until it finally dissolves. Waking up culminates with the direct recognition of your identity with the entire universe. This may sound like esoteric mumbo-jumbo, and sometimes it is, but the states we are about to cover have been reported worldwide by various traditions. What's more, each and every one of them is open to you, should you undertake a consistent practice under an experienced teacher. Consciousness can spontaneously enter altered states. Near-death experiences, extreme exertion, and extreme emotion are some cases where this may happen. Wilber writes around 60% of people have had a major altered state experience in their lives. But generally, waking up requires consistent effort on the part of the individual. It requires some sort of practice. Various traditions have developed such practices, ranging from meditation and breathing techniques to ecstatic dancing and plant medicine. Each of these has its particular strengths and limitations, but that's the topic for another time. Here we'll map the various states your mind can experience. Integral theory's cross-cultural analysis has concluded there are 5 of them. Each of these states reveals a new dimension of yourself and unlocks new ways of experiencing reality. The states are gross or waking, subtle or dreaming, causal or archetypal, Turiya or witnessing, and Turiyatita or non-dual. The first 3 of these are relative states, while the last 2 are ultimate states. We'll return to this distinction in a bit. Before we begin, I want to say a few words about the first paid partner we have on the channel, BetterHelp. Beginning therapy is one of the few decisions I've made that have opened a new chapter in my life. The culture in Bulgaria, where I'm from, does not promote talking about your problems. I myself resisted the idea of therapy for years. That is, until my survival became more urgent than my pride. When I finally decided to go, I found myself on a journey of quite literal, even physical healing. I also began a more intimate encounter with myself than I believed possible. I had the great fortune of meeting a wonderful therapist, of course, to whom I remain grateful ever since. Thank you, Lily. I wish this sort of healing and self-discovery on everyone, and so I'm happy to get to talk to you about BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online service that connects you with a credentialed therapist trained to listen and give you unbiased advice. It works like this. You can visit the BetterHelp website through the link betterhelp.com/seeker-to-seeker. On the website, you answer a few questions and BetterHelp match you to a therapist. I tried this feature and I was amazed at just how much attention goes into profiling your particular needs before they even find you a therapist. You're usually matched within 48 hours and then you can schedule your first session. This can be via phone call, video chat or messaging, whichever you choose. If this sounds like something that might be useful to you, check out betterhelp.com/seeker-to-seeker. And I wish you too a journey of healing and growth. And now back to the video. The gross or waking state is the one we're in most of the time. Here, consciousness is securely anchored to the ego. Our sense of separate self is more or less fixed, and we experience the world as made of separate objects, people, and events. Consciousness experiences incessant mental chatter and bouts of craving, aversion, and ignorance. Most importantly, this state is suffused with discomfort, dissatisfaction, and suffering, what the Buddha calls dukkha. An important note here, language is adapted to this gross state. The further we get from this state, the less adequate words become as means of communication. Literal language gives way to metaphor, and metaphor gives way to silence. There are states of consciousness from which people return without any words to describe their experiences. In such cases, silence says more than words ever could. In any case, the suffering inherent in the growth state has driven people's search for alternatives. And the first state they explored is the one we experience every night. In the subtle or dream state, the ego liquefies. We still possess a subtle personality, but one that is fluid and porous. Our sense of self can easily morph and embody different aspects of its nature. This same fluidity imbues also the things, entities, and events we experience. The physical realm is replaced by metaphysical images, symbols, and forms. The shamanic practice of soul flight and lucid dreaming work in this state. Jung, that great modern shaman, has explored the subtle state further than most. It is here that he says our personal psyche can receive teaching from the collective psyche of our species, of all of life in fact. This is what makes dream journaling and analysis such a powerful practice. Seemingly meaningless dreams often contain lessons in symbolic form. Jung points out dreams are not obscure on purpose. In fact, they communicate as clearly as the subtle state allows. This is not theory or conjecture. The messages within dreams are an observable fact, should we afford the humility to listen. You can watch our video on Jung's self and the Buddha's non-self for more on this. Once we move beyond the dream state, we enter the causal or archetypal state. This state actually has two levels, a formal and a formless one. Now, my description of these states may sound esoteric at points. Not many people have experienced these states throughout history, and so appropriate words have not been invented. Hence, we have to use ordinary words in non-ordinary ways. The formal causal state contains what Plato calls forms, what Jung calls archetypes, and what Indian philosophy calls vasanas. These are all names for the universal patterns of existence. You can think of these patterns as the fundamental motifs or the primary colors of reality. At every moment, spirit generates universal forms, the first forms. Forms such as love and hatred, life and death, light and darkness, etc. Spirit then filters down through these forms and shapes into the manifest world we experience. This is not something you must take on faith, and please ignore it if it makes no sense. Just know this is what integral theory calls the formal causal state. Here you experience the forms that cause the world. It is a real state, and there's a number of practices that can take you there. The formless causal state takes us one step beyond these universal forms, where they are still undifferentiated. Here one only experiences pure consciousness without content, apparently. I cannot speak from experience. The wisdom traditions claim we enter this state every night during deep, dreamless sleep. The Buddhist tradition in particular discusses it at length. This exhausts the relative states of consciousness we know of. There are two more states, however, which Wilber calls ultimate. Whichever relative state you're in, the two ultimate states are already present. There's nothing you must do to enter these last two states, as you are already in them. The catch is, it may take you a lifetime to recognize this. As the Sufi wrote, the thing we tell of can never be found by seeking, yet only seekers find it. The first ultimate state is called Turiya. You don't have to remember the word, don't worry. Integral theory borrows the term from Hindu philosophy to denote a state free from all identification with experience. This state is also often called the witness. In Turiya, you experience yourself as the boundless, empty, aware space in which all of experience is occurring. And yet this description is misleading. Being a boundless, empty, aware space is yet another experience within Turiya. Turiya cannot be adequately described with words, and you can never understand it until you experience yourself as it. Wilbur writes, "The witness is not anything that can be observed or seen. It's the pure seer. As you go in search of this true self, you won't find it by seeing something. If you see anything, that's just more objects, more content, more stuff. Rather, you'll start to sense a vast freedom from all of this, a vast openness and spaciousness, not as an object, but as an atmosphere." Turiya is one good candidate for what the Buddha describes by the term nirvana. Recognizing this unconditioned state and staying with the recognition means full liberation from suffering. Buddhist self-immolation is a tragic but powerful display of this. One watches in horror and wonder as the monk burns to the bones without so much as a flinch. The final and highest state of consciousness is Turiyatita. This means simply beyond Turiya. This state is also called non-dual, as it is the recognition of total identity, of consciousness and its contents. Here is how Wilbur describes it. Your sense of being a separate self simply disappears. Your ego no longer has an experience. Your ego becomes every experience it has. That is, your sense of self expands to enfold every single experience that it is having. It reaches out and embraces the entire world, and you are all of that. Turiyatita is well documented in non-dual traditions. Here, as the Heart Sutra says, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. I hope this summary of the 5 states open to consciousness gives you a good map for your own journey. For most people, the ordinary, waking state constitutes real reality. Waking up shows us quite the opposite is true. The growth state is the most constricted and stressful mode of being. What's more, it gives you the most partial understanding of your true nature. Waking up opens up new dimensions of experiencing ourselves in the world, leading to the total identity of the two. What was first an ego discovers it is, in fact, all of existence. Talk about becoming your true self. But as revolutionary as this is, it is only one part of the journey. Most enlightened teachers in history have supported slavery, sexism, racism, and war. Many have been painfully superstitious. To experience yourself as the universe tells you nothing about universal human rights, or ecology, or the scientific method. Outer states of consciousness eclipse the ego for a while, but sooner or later you're back to the small-minded, anxiety-ridden, neurotic ego, wondering where all the enlightenment went. And the answer is, it is not enlightenment's job to make you a mature and authentic individual, nor is it enlightenment's job to stop war, violence, and crime. For this, there are other journeys we must undertake, other paths of becoming our true self. Thank you for watching. To learn more, check out the full-length video here. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel for more videos on religion, philosophy, and psychology. See you next time.